weekly webinar. And this morning, or it's morning for me, but this evening for everyone, I want to speak about a subject that has always been intriguing to me. And as we know from Master's teachings, that there's a universal impulse, is the way Master said it. And Swamiji explained this also in his book, Out of the Labyrinth, that there's a universal impulse toward expansion. Not just, it's sort of embedded in the universe itself, expansion. We see the universe on the physical side expanding, but also it's a movement toward expansion of consciousness on the physical plane, but also on the metaphysical plane as well, a desire for greater joy. And Master based his teachings very subtly on this principle. I say subtly, but he was very overt when he said in his first lecture, when he came to the United States, he said, all souls are seeking happiness. It's a universal principle, and it's an expression of that universality of expansion, a seek for greater awareness. And of course, as we seek happiness, we begin to look out into the world as what is going to bring me happiness. We look for ways that we might be able to express that in our own lives, find those in those lives. And out of that, of course, arises in the world various teachings and religions, and have been passed down to us. Say, try this has been found to be successful, or try this or that or another thing. And so we have in the world today a lot of many different expressions of world religions, philosophies. You even have fads and things that come and go, telling us how we might fulfill ourselves, that supreme desire within ourselves to seek happiness, to find happiness in life, but true happiness. And of course, religion in the highest sense is that path that is going to give us truly what we want, and expresses it on many different levels. And of course, a true religion is said to be true on all levels, not just philosophically, but also true in practical application into our day-to-day life. And so I titled today's class, or today's discourse, is True and False Religion, and or something to that effect. I didn't see what Bara actually wrote, but how might we be able to understand what is a true religion and what is a false religion? Because there are many things in this world that purport to take us to what our true goal is, but don't really do that. And I want to begin by reading something that Swami Kriyananda wrote, and it'll kind of give the tone of where I want to go with this. And I'm going to bring it up on my screen so I can see it here. Okay. True versus false religions. Swamiji writes, is it possible for a religion to be great? Is it merely bigotry that would make us say that some aren't great? Certainly, some are not as great as others, or they evolved from different levels of consciousness. It's not always a master who creates a religion. When a religion comes down to us from an avatar, a divine incarnation, when it is something that God has sent to earth instead of man merely creating it in the aspiration to know God, then we have one of the great religions of the world. Lesser religions are those which merely concern themselves with making man a socially responsible animal, enlarging his vision of life on a social level. That is, of course, one of the purposes of all religions, but that's why we call religious even some philosophies that deny an afterlife or deny God. True religion is God-made, not man-made. Outward forms do not constitute religion. Religion is true if it provides soul nourishment from within. Like all things natural, the human body itself is made to permit life to flow through it, through the spine especially, and from the spine outward into the nervous system. True religion teaches man how to fill his body, his entire being from within with divine vitality. So there, I'll put that away. And this is a sense of, I bring this up because when we talk about religion, it's like Swami said, you can talk, there's true religions and there's lesser degrees. And this becomes a tricky subject actually to talk about, because we said, oh, who is this to judge? Who's that? Who is this person or that person to judge what's true or not true? And but there's a certain fact that certain beliefs will take us to our goal more truly and aspire to a high goal. In other words, we can believe anything in life. We can believe the world is flat, but that doesn't make it so. So it is that in our day-to-day societal existence, many different teachings come along historically, or they come along on day-to-day. There's always seeming to be a new fad or a new thing, try this, try that. And the tricky thing is they actually might be helpful. And to say that they're false is not necessarily helpful to those people who find that teaching helpful. So consequently, one has to be careful when talking about this subject, because I mentioned last week a principle that Swamiji said, which he took from Master, that it's a spiritual sin to destroy the faith of another person. In other words, if a person believes in something and you say, well, that's actually not true. Well, you may be right, but does it help that other person? Because sometimes they're believing in things that have a helpful nature to them, or it helps them to rise up. Although the ultimate veracity of that may be suspect. And Master addressed this question with regard to a certain teaching in America, and it's in other countries as well, where the founder of that religion had buried a set of scrolls on bronze, I think, or brass, and he buried them, and many years later came back and dug them up and claimed that he had discovered these tablets written with the teaching on them. And he was a very charismatic person, and he drew a large crowd to him. And they were nice. They were not bad things that were written on the scrolls, but they were forgeries, or not forgeries, but they were not true. They didn't derive historically. He had created them out of a general good teaching. And so many people have been attracted over the years to that. But Master was saying there's a certain, if you go deeper into them, you can see that there's a certain limitation to them. Now, Master didn't name what this teaching was, and neither will I, but they were helpful to people. And if I've noticed that people who are advocates of that religion, that expression of religion, maybe is a better way to say it, are actually quite good people. And and those beliefs are actually have a lot of common sense to them. And I notice that people live good lives. It's just that the theology, if you go into it too deeply, is a little bit strange. And this is why in that particular belief system, they don't go into theology very deeply. It's more about how do you behave in life, and it actually has had a very good result on people. So to say that one religion is true or false, so as I said, it's tricky to say that because it's helpful to some people. But there comes a point where there's limitations. Does it take you, a certain teaching can take you to a certain level, but it really can't go beyond that because it doesn't contain the truth that will take us to what each of us in our soul ultimately want. And that is, we want soul liberation. We want soul transcendence of the ego, which is usually, you can have a purified ego, and many teachings, what they do, what they are, and why they have an appeal, is they appeal to the perfection of the ego. We can create a wonderful system on this world. If we all do this, life will be joyful for everybody. But it's an outward thing of not, it's not a transcendent thing. True joy, true peace on earth, you might say, is never going to be attained unless we transcend ego involvement. And so this life is all, as long as we're in this world of duality, which is the world of the ego, there's always going to be pain and suffering. There's always going to be a sense of lack. We're never going to be totally, as souls, fulfilled. And so there's always going to be aspiration to go beyond that. So a true religion gives us those tools and those aspiration to go what we truly want as souls. And so if you hear in the news about there's a new religion or a new fad or a new expression or a new something or another, remember, there's nothing new when it comes to religion. It's only a new expression of something that's universal if it's truly a true religion, a deep religion. And so Master, when he was asked the question, "Sir, is this a new religion?" He said, "No, there's no new religion. There's only one religion. That's Sanatana Dharma, the eternal religion of that which is true universally. But it's a new expression. And so consequently, you can have new expressions, but all expressions, if they're truly true, harken back to those true principles that have been passed down through the ages." And so but it's not always easy to distinguish. And because, like I said, sometimes false statements can actually be beneficial to a person on a certain level. And I suppose maybe when, in old days, many things were said that were not true, but they were helpful. And so I don't mean to shake anybody's beliefs in something, because that would not be wise of me. But nevertheless, for those, you're all here, and I suspect you're looking for the deeper answers to life. And that's what Paramahansa Yogananda brought, a deeper understanding of what true religion is, because we seek to transcend the ego. So some things to think about. How do we know, though? We're in this world, there are many things, many choices out there. How do we know? Well, ultimately, we have to come back to the understanding that one will only know when one has that personal experience oneself. It's an individual, one is individually attains that state of enlightenment, one knows. And there's nothing that will shake one from that understanding. It's, when unity is attained, there's no comparison. But realizing that we're in this world and we're aspiring to that, and assuming that we have not yet attained that pure vision through our own personal experience, I'm speaking to that question. How do we know? Well, some of the things to start with, I think one of the first things is what is being claimed testable? In other words, can it be replicated? Can you and I, if somebody says something's to be ultimately true, can you and I directly experience that? If it's not attainable by us, it's just something that's beyond, then how is it ever going to be tested? We have to accept something not just on faith. Faith can be tested, but it's belief only. And we're in an age where belief itself is not enough. We're in a scientific age, and this is the beauty of science, because science says, is it replicatable? And so is it testable? And Kriyananda had a very good statement. He says, when you're in the world of just belief, you're also tending to be, and societally, you're tending to be in the world of dogmatism. And dogmatism increases in direct proportion to the inability of something to be tested. In other words, if you can't test something, you can make any statement you want about it, that there's no way to be tested. And then you can be very dogmatic about it. And this also applies to spirituality. But in terms of one's even one's own inner attainment of a certain state, is it testable? Are there ways to test something? Swami or Master Yogananda gave an example of a man who had come to him claiming that he was in a state of he could attain a state of cosmic consciousness at will. And Master took one look at him, and he saw that the man had a restless breath, that he couldn't, he couldn't basically stop the bodily functions. His mind was here and there. And he said, no, that's not true. I think, man, you're Mr. So-and-so, you're mistaken. And so the man said, no, I'll show you. He said, yes, please show me. And so the man went in, closed his eyes, he went into a state, and he said, now I am in the state of cosmic consciousness. And he had claimed that he could bodily travel astrally to different places with his body. You get all kinds who make these sorts of statements. And said, okay, well, where are you now? And he says, I am on the top of the Taj Mahal. And Yoganandaji said to him, he says, well, sir, on top of the dome of the Taj Mahal, he says, well, Master said, I think there's something wrong with your dome. I think it's cracked because I see you sitting right here in front of me. And the Master, the man came out of his state, and Master said, let's try this in a way that's a little bit more that we can test it. And so he asked him, and suggested to the man, because they were in a hotel room in some city that Master was visiting. And he says, put yourself in, there's a restaurant on the ground floor of this restaurant. Put yourself there and tell me what you see. And the man says, of course. And so he went into his state again and put himself in the restaurant. Well, I see as you go into the restaurant on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, there's a piano, and there is a bar over here, and there's tables, and there's two people sitting in this table and another person over there. And Yogananda says, well, let me tell you what I see. And he told them a totally different scenario that was in that restaurant. He says, now let us go down and check. They went down to the restaurant, and it was exactly as Master had described, and not at all like the other fellow had described. And the Master was so surprised because he had been in a state, he said, I truly thought he was in this state of cosmic consciousness when he was traveling here or there, but he had obviously a very lucid imagination, but it was testable. And I think we have to be able to test that which is passed down to us. Test it practically, test it in your daily life. What effect do the teachings have upon you? Do they bring about those things that are universally recognized as states of deep spiritual attainment? Does it bring joy? Does it bring expansion of consciousness, bliss even? And these things, now maybe a person can subconsciously induce those states in themselves, but is it objective? Do you see objective changes over a long period of time, not a day or two, but do the teachings that you follow or one follows, does it have a positive effect upon one over a sustained period of time? In other words, what are the fruits of one's practice? Do they bring joy, bliss, beneficial results? Not only in one's own opinion, but in others' opinion of you. Do other people see changes that are positive in you? Or do they notice these things? Do they give you soul nourishment? And we need to test, do a teaching, does it corroborate what it says, your own life's experiences of what reality and truth is? Does it corroborate that? Not if us, so consequently, if a teaching was saying it's proper to spread hatred and kill other people, in the name of one's religion, perhaps. I mean, does that truly, in your life's experience, those sorts of actions bring about joy, love, attunement with higher realities? No. So you have to ask, does it corroborate your own life's experience? And in your experience, is it bringing those results to you? Because ultimately, you are the true test subject in any experiment that's going on. But we should take it beyond. Uh, I mean, you could say, do they reflect? How do they reflect in the lives of other people? Also, if you look at other people who are practitioners of that, you see these states that you're trying to attain, are they reflected in those people's behavior, in their bearing, in the direction they're going? So you look at your own life, but then look at the lives and character of those who are considered high souls in that religion, or saints even. Now we can study the lives of saints. And what are the qualities that they manifested? Are they, and so consequently, those people in whatever teaching you're attracted to, are they inspired? Are there saints? You know, we can't judge everybody in that, because not everybody, even in the greatest religion, you're going to find scoundrels. But of those who are saintly, look for saints in life, look for high souls in life. What do they practice? What are their beliefs? And look for the people who are demonstratively great people in life. What do they practice? What do they say? But even this isn't enough, because you have to realize even saintly people can sometimes, maybe they're not perfect yet. They're great souls, yes, but maybe they're not yet perfect. And so consequently, if they're not perfect, you have to realize that truly perfected beings are not that common in the world. But are those people that you admire going in a direction that, yes, they embody characteristics I would like to go? And if you have a certain belief, do you see that in those people? And so consequently, I mentioned right at the beginning, it's tricky. Like there are religions or sects or beliefs that may not be ultimately true, but for a person on a certain level, it's helpful to them. And so if you could say, oh, it's helpful to them, maybe I'll believe that too. Well, maybe so. So go that way. But in time, there's a certain plateau that you may reach. And if you find you've reached that plateau and you don't see others who have transcended that plateau, then you might consider what is the true nature of that belief system. Does the teachings that you're perhaps attracted to, do they correspond with the universal teachings of the ages as declared by great saints over the ages, and also declared by scripture, what are considered to be scriptures? Interestingly, Swami Kriyananda was, he was, with some of his detractors in his parent organization that he grew up in, Self-Realization Fellowship, considered him a bit of a maverick because he was coming up with new things all the time. But the essentials of the teachings, he was not a maverick. He was actually very conservative. He would always use as his guide, what did Master say? And if Master said something, even though maybe it was something, you don't know the context always of what Master would say something sometimes, but Swami would always give Master the benefit of the doubt. And he would say, well, Master said this. And so although he would sometimes consider, well, maybe he also could have been something else, he wouldn't go against that, except in very, very rare cases where he was pretty sure that it was taken out of context or Master meant something other than what he actually said. So he was very conservative in that way. He was very conservative to the truth. What are the universal teachings of the ages? Or what are the universal teachings of the great ones? The masters throughout the ages have declared. And as he would say, there's nothing new under the sun. There is no such thing as new truths. Truth itself is eternal. There are new expressions of that truth, but not the essential teachings. And soul freedom in God is our potential. And this has universally been attested to by all the great ones throughout the ages. Inner communion with divine as its goal is the highest teaching. If so, that is not embodied in the teaching. Transcendence of ego, inner communion with God, divine union. If these are not the goals of a religion, then or a teaching, then they're suspect. They may be a good teaching, may be good, but they're not the highest. And you could say, whatever you're attracted to, does it accept the fact that the ego, or does it think of it as the ego as central to human existence, or does it encourage us to transcend ego? A true scripture is the latter. And there are many things in nice teachings that are basically aimed at perfecting an ego-embodied soul. Now, those are noble things, but they're not the highest things. Ultimately, we have to transcend ego as one of the foundation stones of all the great saints and sages that have come down throughout the ages. You could also, when you're reading scripture, true scripture has a certain, and this is hard to qualify or speak to, they have a certain power, a divine power. And of course, one has to have a sense of spiritual sensitivity to vibration. But you see that as your sensitivity to vibration increases, certain scriptures endure throughout the ages because of that vibrational power that they convey. They may be hard to understand, but yet you have to say this has some sort of power, and it's a good power. There can be negative powers as well, but and also you could say that do the words of a scripture convey the conviction of personal experience? And so consequently, you read the words of the great saints who speak of the highest states with absolute personal conviction. Now, again, this takes a certain amount of discrimination because people can be misled also in that. But I think you understand that there's that element. So maybe it's not the first element to judge something by, but nevertheless, it's something to keep in mind. And you could see that also in the world of testing, the validity of a true teaching has been demonstrated by the uplifting influence they have on sincere seekers who have devoted years to their practice. Not somebody who's come and 2 months later, oh, I feel so uplifted. Well, lots of things can do that. But people who have practiced something and have been uplifted for a good portion of their lifetime, it's had a positive influence that can be demonstrated by your observation, by other people's observations, and by their own testimony. And they're sincere. And that, again, is something to take note of. And another one along those lines, does a teaching come down through the ages does it have its origins, you could say, from a liberated master or from an avatar? Avatar being a liberated master who has incarnated with a special divine mission. Now, this is also a sensitive one at times because there are traditions that don't derive from liberated saints. We often share this statement. The saints are the custodians of religion because true saints, they know what they know through deep personal experience and personal transcendence of duality. And some people would say, well, I've read this book and it's been descended from angelic beings. Some archangel had said this or that, or somebody had channeled an angelic being and wrote out the scripture of what the angelic being said. Well, right there, you should give pause, because angelic beings, even if that channeling, and remember, whenever somebody says, I've channeled something, a high teaching, that teaching is influenced by the channel. In other words, the channel influence, unless that channel is perfectly pure and liberated, it's going to be influenced by that very channel. But also, we need to realize that when somebody channels the words of an archangel, let's say, archangels are a lesser channel than a liberated master. So if I was to go off in a cave and an archangel David or Michael, Gabriel appeared to me, and that might be a high teaching, but it's not the highest of teachings, because does it conform to what liberated souls are? Because angelic entities are not liberated. They're bound on a lesser plane of existence. Now, that's a whole different topic to discuss, but they're not the equivalent of a perfectly liberated avatar. So redemption, remember, this is the principle that Paramahansa Yogananda explained. Redemption comes through humans who have attained soul freedom, not through angels. And this, of course, saints are the custodians of religion, but saints are not always handy. So what happens is dogma takes their place to help people avoid it. Now, actually, we say the word dogma, and in a sense, it's just statements. You say statements of truth, and they're not always bad, because we do need statements, and scripture needs to be applied on all different levels. And so a person with undeveloped spiritual intuition needs some guiding principles. And so we have, like the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not steal or shall not kill, and so forth. We have Patanjali's Yama and Niyama, and as we know, those can be interpreted on many different levels. You know, thou shalt not steal. Okay, that makes sense. Societally, it's much better not for one person not to steal from another. But ultimately, you take it to a deeper understanding, is taking from another is an affirmation of separation from another person. Taking from another is a mine and thine. And I'm only taking from myself. Taking from another is an affirmation of a form of lack in myself. What is it that I lack? I think I can fulfill that lack by something outside myself, which is a falsehood. So to steal, we have to understand, is on many levels. Taking that which is not ours by right already. Now, you see, we have to, and so as long as we're doing stealing, we're affirming separation, we're affirming ego. So a true master, but of course, never denies the truth expressed by another master. He may express it differently or give different emphasis. And so thus Jesus says in the Bible, he says, think not that I come to destroy the law or the prophets. I have come to fulfill the law. And so again, people were saying, oh, Jesus Christ, he's come with a new religion. And he's basically casting aside the prophets that have gone before him. And that wasn't the case at all. He came as a new expression. He came to fulfill what the prophets had said in their time, in their language, in their context. And he came to say the same thing, but in a new context. And so again, that's a subtle point between those 2 points of view. But people can believe many things. And I say, going back to what I started with, it can be tricky. Don't upset other people's belief system if it's doing them good, if it's helping them. It may not help you because you may be in a different situation. But again, look closely. Don't just, you have to take the teachings and you have to relate them back into your own life, and starting with a sense of self-honesty. I don't know all the answers, but I'm open to being guided to the right thing. And you test something. Is that really true? Is it bringing me joy? And I think if you, as you progress further and further in your understanding, take it back to that basic principles, you might say the cornerstones that you have made of your own spiritual life. God is joy, God is bliss. I'm a disciple of a great master. What did the master say? Take it to that level. Now, even there, the master would say, yes, take what I've said outwardly, but you really want to take it to the point where you can test it inwardly within your own self. And because this world, when we live in this world of relativity, true teachings can only be verified for our own personal experience. And so ask yourself, is it taking me in a good direction? And I do think you practice Kriya, you meditate, all of these things. After a period of time, you have to look within yourself, is it changing me in a direction that's good? You don't know absolutely yet, but is it changing me? Is it helpful? And then perhaps you need to compare to what? And is it taking me in the direction I want to go? And this is, in a sense, what I think what Swamiji had always encouraged us. Don't just take things on pure belief, test them. And that's why we've been given Kriya Yoga. But even Kriya, we realize you have to practice. We have to practice. Practicing for a year or two isn't going to be able to give us the final test, but you have to ask, has it moved us in the right direction? So my own feeling is we have to test our teachings, unless, of course, we achieve our goal in less than a lifetime. We have to give them a lifetime. Commit ourselves to that, because commitment, if you're not committed to something, you're saying, well, maybe I'll try this for a year. Now that a year. Now maybe there's always this lack of commitment that creates a block within us. So find something that you can commit to and then test it. And of course, if it turns out it's not giving what you want, well, then you have to seek deeper. And I will conclude with these words that Swami shared. He said, accept nothing that doesn't appeal to your highest sense of what is right and true. Even then, be guided by the supportive opinions of the wise. You see, now he says, first you have to look within. Is it right? Is it true? But even then, be guided. But what do the masters say? And if they say something contrary, well, then I have to go deeper into that and study that a little bit more. You see, because I have to recognize through my self-honesty that I'm not yet clear. And so, again, accept nothing that doesn't appeal to your highest sense of what is right and true. Even then, be guided by the supportive opinions of the wise. When wise persons in general agree on the spiritual authenticity of a document, or you could say of a teaching, then only, so wisdom dictates, may the document, or in this case, the teaching, be safely accepted as true scripture. If something, and then I'll add, if something contradicts the wise, the true, those who have been recognized age old as the saints, if something contradicts it or contradicts scripture, now, doesn't mean it's false, but what it means is, and this is what Swami and what Master said, be careful. You don't immediately reject something, but if it's been not something that's been corroborated by the wise over time, then it takes extremely good evidence that you should counter what's gone before you. So, a few thoughts. Take those into your meditation and look at your own life and look at those things that come to you, because there's something new all the time. But just again, as Master said, there's no new religion. Sanatana Dharma is the underlying religion of the universe, that which is truth, but it expresses itself newly always. So be open to the expression, but yet always revert back to those touchstones of your own personal experience and the wisdom that has preceded us, the wisdom of the wise, of those who we feel have demonstrated wisdom in their own life and have proclaimed it through scripture or through their own lives throughout the ages. God bless all of you. I hope to see you again next week. Joy, 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 joy to you.